Come with me, the night a millionaire saved a stranger from the cold asterisk. The December wind cut through downtown Chicago like a blade, turning every breath into visible clouds that disappeared as quickly as hope itself. Natalie Foster pulled, her thin jacket tighter around her shoulders, but it did little to keep out the bitter cold that seemed to seep into her very bones. She sat on the metal bench outside the closed coffee shop, staring at the empty street where yellow taxis had stopped running hours ago. Just 6 months earlier, Natalie had been living a completely different life. She had owned a small bakery called Sweet Dreams, where the smell of fresh bread and cinnamon rolls filled the air every morning. Regular customers knew her by name, and she knew theirs. Mrs. Patterson always ordered blueberry muffins on Tuesdays. Tommy from the construction site across the street loved her chocolate chip cookies. Life had been simple, warm, and full of purpose. But dreams can crumble faster than day-old pastries. When her business partner disappeared with all their money, taking the rent payments and supplier funds with him, everything fell apart in a matter of weeks. The bakery closed, her apartment was lost, and her savings account sat empty like a broken promise. Friends she thought would help turned away when she asked for assistance. Family members made excuses about their own financial troubles. Now, Natalie found herself with nothing but the clothes on her back and a pride that had been battered but not completely broken. She had been sleeping in shelters when beds were available, but tonight every place was full. The social worker at the last shelter had looked at her with tired eyes and said, "Try again tomorrow morning. Maybe someone will leave." The snow began, falling harder, each flake adding to the white blanket that covered the empty sidewalks. Natalie's stomach growled, reminding her that she had not eaten since the small sandwich she had managed to buy with her last $5 that morning. Her phone had died 2 days ago, and she had no way to charge it. The world felt impossibly large and impossibly lonely. She watched as couples walked by, bundled up in expensive coats, laughing and holding hands as they hurried toward warm restaurants and heated cars. None of them looked her way. She had become invisible, just another piece of the urban landscape that people preferred not to see. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She was completely alone in a city of millions. As the clock on the bank across the street showed 11:30, Natalie began to wonder if she would survive the night. The temperature was dropping fast, and her fingers were already numb despite being tucked into her jacket pockets. She had heard stories about people freezing to death on nights like this, found in the morning like forgotten statues covered in snow. Just as despair began to settle over her, like the falling snow, she heard the sound of a car engine slowing down nearby. Through the white curtain of snowflakes, she could see headlights approaching, then stopping. A car door opened and closed, followed by footsteps crunching through the fresh snow. A tall figure emerged from the swirling white, moving toward her with purpose, but not haste. Even in the dim light from the street lamp, she could see that this was someone who belonged to a different world than the one she now inhabited. His coat looked expensive, his shoes were leather, and everything about him spoke of warmth and security. "Excuse me," the man said, his voice cutting through the wind. "Are you all right?" Natalie looked up at him, surprised by the genuine concern in his tone. Most people who bothered to acknowledge her existence did so with judgment or pity. This stranger sounded different, like he actually cared about her answer. "I'm fine," she lied, the words coming out automatically even as her body shivered uncontrollably. The man stepped closer, and she could see his face more clearly now. He appeared to be in his early 30s, with dark hair dusted with snowflakes, and eyes that seemed to see right through her protective walls. "No," he said simply, "you're not." The man standing before Natalie introduced himself as Daniel Morrison, though she would not learn until much later that his name appeared on the sides of buildings throughout the city. Right now, he was simply someone who had chosen to stop when everyone else kept walking. "I'm not going to hurt you," Daniel said, keeping his distance, but not leaving. "Die. But I can't drive away knowing you're out here in this weather. It's supposed to get down to 10 below tonight." Natalie studied his face, looking for signs of the predatory interest she had learned to fear during her weeks on the streets. Instead, she saw something she had almost forgotten existed: simple human kindness without strings attached. Stu. Years of disappointment had taught her to be cautious. I don't need charity, she said, lifting her chin despite the chattering of her teeth. I'm not offering charity, Daniel replied. I'm offering help. There's a difference. He pulled out his phone and made a quick call. Maria, it's Daniel. I need you to prepare the guest room at the office. Yes, tonight. Thank you, ended the call and looked back at Natalie. I have a small apartment above my office. It's warm, it's safe, and you can leave whenever you want. No questions asked. Something in his tone made Natalie believe him, though she had learned not to trust easily. Perhaps it was the way he spoke to her as an equal rather than looking down at her with pity. Or maybe it was simply that she was too cold and tired to fight anymore. Why? She asked. Why would you help a complete stranger? Daniel was quiet. For a moment, snow collecting on his shoulders as he seemed to consider how to answer. 5 years ago, my sister died, he said finally. She had been homeless for 3 months, struggling with addiction, and too proud to ask for help. She froze to death on a night just like this one, alone on a bench not much different from where you're sitting. The pain in his voice was unmistakable, and Natalie felt something shift inside her chest. This was not about pity or charity. This was about love and loss and the human need to prevent tragedy when possible. I can't save my sister, Daniel continued. But maybe I can help someone else's sister or daughter or friend. Natalie felt tears threatening to spill over, though she could not tell if they were from the cold, exhaustion, or the unexpected kindness of this stranger. She had spent so many weeks being treated as less than human that she had almost forgotten what it felt like to matter to someone. She whispered, the word barely audible over the wind. Daniel's face relaxed with relief. He walked back to his car and returned with a thick blanket which he wrapped around her shoulders before helping her to her feet. Her legs were unsteady from the cold and from sitting still for so long, but his arm provided support without being presumptuous. The car was blissfully warm with heated seats that felt like heaven against her frozen body. Daniel drove carefully through the empty streets, the windshield wipers working overtime to clear the heavy snow. Classical music played softly from the radio, creating a cocoon of peace that Natalie had not experienced in months. What's your name? Daniel asked, as they stopped at a red light. Natalie, she said, surprising herself by giving her real name instead of one of the fake ones she had been using at shelters. It's nice to meet you, Natalie. The simple exchange felt monumental. After so many weeks of being nameless and invisible, as they pulled into the parking garage beneath a sleek office building, Natalie realized that her life was about to change in ways she could not yet imagine. Daniel's kindness was just the beginning of a story that would transform them both, though. Neither could have predicted the journey that lay ahead on that snowy December night. The elevator rose smoothly to the 20th floor, carrying Natalie away from the cold street and into a world she had only glimpsed through windows. Daniel's office was modern but warm, with soft lighting and comfortable furniture that invited relaxation rather than intimidation. The apartment is through here, Daniel said, leading her past conference rooms and towards a door marked private. I sometimes work late, so I had this space converted for overnight stays. The apartment was small but beautifully appointed, with a kitchenette, a comfortable living area, and a bedroom with an attached bathroom. Everything was clean and welcoming, from the soft throw pillows on the sofa to the fresh flowers on the kitchen counter. Maria is my assistant, Daniel explained, noticing Natalie looking at the flowers. She keeps this place stocked with essentials. There are clothes in the closet that should fit you, and the kitchen has enough food for several days. Natalie stood in the middle of the living room, overwhelmed by the sudden transition from desperation to comfort. She had grown so accustomed to uncertainty that safety felt foreign and almost frightening. I don't understand, she said, turning to face him. You don't know anything about me? I could be dangerous, or crazy, or ... Are you? Daniel asked with a slight smile. No, but that's not the point. How do you know that? Daniel sat down on the edge of the sofa, careful to maintain a respectful distance. I've learned to trust my instincts about people. Served me well in business and in life. My instincts tell me that you're someone who's had some bad luck, not someone who... causes trouble for others. Over the next hour, as Natalie warmed up with hot tea and a bowl of soup that Maria had left in the refrigerator, she found herself telling Daniel about her bakery, her former life, the devastating betrayal that had led to her current situation. He listened without judgment, asking thoughtful questions that showed he was truly paying attention. "I used to make the most amazing lemon bars," Natalie said, a wistful smile crossing her face. "My grandmother's recipe. Customers would drive across town just for those." "What made them special?" Daniel asked. "The secret was in the crust," Natalie explained, her eyes lighting up for the first time that night. "Most people make it too thick or too sweet. But if you get the balance just right, with just a hint of vanilla and the perfect amount of butter, ... Daniel watched her transformation as she talked about baking. The defeated woman from the street was disappearing, replaced by someone passionate and skilled and full of knowledge about something she clearly loved. "You could do it again," he said quietly. The light in Natalie's eyes dimmed. "With what money? What credit? I can't even rent an apartment, let alone lease commercial space for a bakery." "There are ways," Daniel said. "Programs for people starting over. Microloans for small businesses. You have skills and experience that's worth more than you might. Think right now." Natalie shook her head. "You don't understand. I'm nobody now. Don't exist in the world where people get business loans and second chances." Daniel leaned forward slightly, his expression serious. "You exist to me. And after tonight, you'll exist to yourself again, too. That's where second chances begin, with remembering who you are underneath everything that's happened to you." As the night wore on, their conversation deepened. Daniel shared stories about building his law practice, about the cases that kept him awake at night, about his sister and the guilt he carried over not being able to save her. Natalie found herself opening up about dreams she had buried, fears she had never voiced, and the loneliness that had become her constant companion. When exhaustion finally overtook them both, Daniel prepared to leave for his own apartment across town. At the door, he paused and looked back at Natalie, who was standing uncertainly in the middle of the room. "This isn't temporary charity," he said. "Take whatever time you need to figure out your next step." "And Natalie? Tomorrow, when you look in the mirror, remember that you're not just a survivor. You're someone with talent and dreams and value. Don't let the world convince you otherwise." After he left, Natalie stood at the window looking out at the city lights twinkling through the falling snow. For the first time in months, she felt something dangerous and wonderful stirring in her chest. Hope. 3 weeks later, Daniel found himself looking forward to their morning conversations over coffee more than any meeting on his calendar. What had started as a simple act of kindness had evolved into something neither had expected, a deep connection built on mutual respect and growing affection. Natalie had transformed during her stay in the office. Apartment, the hollow-cheeked woman from the street had been replaced by someone vibrant and determined. She had used Daniel's computer to research business loans, had sketched dozens of bakery layouts on legal pads she found in his office, and had even convinced Maria too. Let her bake cookies for the office staff. "These are incredible," Daniel said, biting into a chocolate chip cookie that somehow managed to be both crispy and chewy at the same time. "How did you make them so perfect?" "Trade secret," Natalie replied with a grin that made Daniel's heart skip in a way that had nothing to do with caffeine. "But I'll tell you this much, it's all about the temperature of the butter when you cream it with the sugar." Their relationship had developed slowly, built on shared meals, late-night conversations, and the gradual rebuilding of Natalie's confidence. Daniel found himself captivated by her resilience, by the way she could find joy in small victories like successfully negotiating with a potential supplier, or figuring out the perfect ratio for her grandmother's lemon bar recipe. "I have something to show you," Daniel said one snowy Saturday morning, pulling on his coat. "Will you come with me?" They drove through the city to a neighborhood that was clearly in transition, old buildings being renovated, new restaurants opening alongside longtime family businesses. Daniel parked in front of a narrow storefront with large windows and a for-lease sign in the window. "What do you think?" he asked, pulling out a set of keys. Natalie stared at the empty space, her mind already envisioning display cases filled with pastries, small tables where customers could sit with their morning coffee, the smell of fresh bread filling the air. "Daniel, what is this?" "It's a bakery," he said simply. Ouch. Or it could be, with the right person running it. Inside, the space was perfect. High ceilings, good natural light, and a layout that would work beautifully for both baking and retail. Natalie walked through the empty rooms, her footsteps echoing as she mentally arranged equipment and imagined the flow of customers. "The rent is reasonable," Daniel said, watching her face carefully. "The landlord is willing to work with someone who has a solid business plan." "Daniel," Natalie said, turning to face him. "I can't let you do this. You've already done so much, and I can't take advantage of your kindness." "You're not taking advantage of anything," he replied, moving closer to her. "This isn't charity. Natalie, this is an investment in your talent, in your dreams, and in us." The word us hung in the air between them, acknowledging what they had both been feeling, but neither had dared to say. Over the past weeks, their relationship had grown from helper and helped two friends to something deeper and more complicated. "I don't have good credit," Natalie said quietly. "I don't have collateral or references or any of the things banks want to see." "You have something better," Daniel said, reaching out to take her hands. "You have passion and skill and the kind of determination that can't be taught. And you have someone who believes in you completely." Natalie felt tears threatening to spill over, but these were different from the tears of desperation she had cried on that park bench. These were tears of possibility, of dreams being reborn, of finding love in the most unexpected place. "If I fail again," she whispered. "Then we'll figure it out together," Daniel said, pulling her closer. "But Natalie, what if you succeed? What if this becomes everything you dreamed it could be?" Standing in that empty storefront, surrounded by potential and possibility, Natalie finally allowed herself to believe in second chances. When Daniel kissed her for the first time, soft and sweet like the promise of spring after a long winter, she tasted hope and love and the future they were building together. 6 months later, the smell of cinnamon and vanilla drifted from the windows of Sweet Dreams Bakery, drawing customers like a warm embrace on even the coldest Chicago mornings. Natalie stood behind the counter, her apron dusted with flour, watching as Mrs. Patterson bit into a blueberry muffin and smiled with satisfaction. "Just like I remembered," the elderly woman said. "I'm so glad you're back, dear." The bakery had become more than Natalie had ever dared dream, the morning rush brought. Office workers grabbing coffee and pastries on their way to work. Lunch brought neighbors stopping by for fresh sandwiches and soup. Afternoons brought families with children who pressed their noses against the display case, deciding between cupcakes and cookies. Daniel had become more than an investor or even a boyfriend. He had become her partner in every sense of the word. He helped with the books, consulted on legal issues, and could often be found on Saturday mornings helping behind the counter or chatting with regular customers who had come to know him as Natalie's Daniel. "The lemon bars are almost gone," Daniel called from where he was restocking the display case. "Should I bring out the backup tray?" "Please," Natalie replied, watching as he moved with the easy familiarity of someone who had found his place. "And check on the sourdough in the back oven. It should be ready in about 10 minutes. Their partnership extended beyond the bakery. Daniel had reduced his law practice to focus on pro bono work, using the financial security the bakery provided to take on cases for people who reminded him of Natalie on that snowy night, people who needed someone to believe in them. When they could no longer believe in themselves, "There's someone here to see you," Maria said, appearing in the doorway between the bakery and the small office in back. She was smiling in a way that made Natalie immediately suspicious. In the dining area, Daniel was standing next to a small table set for two, complete with flowers and champagne. The evening light streaming through the windows cast everything in a golden glow, and Natalie suddenly became aware that the bakery was empty except for the two of them. "Did you close early?" she asked, looking around in confusion. "I may have." Asked Maria to flip the sign and lock the door, Daniel admitted. I wanted to talk to you about something important. Natalie felt her heart begin to race as Daniel reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Even though part of her had been expecting this moment, the reality of it took her breath away. "Natalie Foster," Daniel said, dropping to one knee in the middle of the bakery that had become the symbol of their shared dreams. "You taught me that the sweetest things in life come from taking chances on people, on love, on the possibility that broken things can be made whole again." Tears were streaming down Natalie's face as he opened the box to reveal a simple, elegant ring that caught the light like a promise. "Will you marry me?" Daniel asked. "Will you let me spend the rest of my life helping you build dreams and sharing in all the sweet moments still to come?" "Yes," Natalie whispered, then louder, "Yes, of course, yes." Daniel slipped the ring onto her finger and stood to kiss her. Natalie marveled at the journey that had brought them to this moment. 1 year ago, she had been sitting on a bench in the snow, convinced that her story was over. Now she was standing in her own bakery, surrounded by the smell of fresh bread and the warmth of love, preparing to begin a new chapter with the man who had saved her life by seeing her worth when she could not see it herself. "I love you," Daniel murmured against her ear as they swayed together in the golden light of their bakery. "I love you too," Natalie replied, thinking of all the morning customers who would soon become wedding guests, all the sweet dreams yet to be baked, all the cold nights that would never touch them again because they had found warmth in each other. Outside, snow began to fall again, but inside Sweet Dreams Bakery, surrounded by love and possibility. Now Natalie and Daniel danced to music only they could hear, the sweet sound of dreams coming true.